Fans, we are back with another live edition of the Great North Wrestling Podcast on thehannibaltv.com. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling, and I'm very pleased to bring on today a man who's had quite a career in the professional wrestling business, a man that was or is a TNA original and one of the stalwarts of their product, starting with the years in Nashville and then moving to Orlando. And he's got a million other interesting experiences in between. I would be talking about the one and the only, the Messiah of the Spine Buster, Mr. David Young. David, thank you for coming on tonight, sir.
Oh, man, thank you so much for having me. I love
Appreciate
doing
it.
this thing.
Very much appreciated. I read growing up that you were a fan of the business from a very, very early age. So I think the logical starting point would be to ask, what companies did you follow, and did you have any major influences from that period of time that resulted in you getting involved in the business?
Well, growing up, I was always an NWA kid. It was always Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat. I mean, those were always my heroes. Ricky Morton, honestly, I think Ricky Morton could have ran for president in 1989. I mean, I really do.
Absolutely.
He was that popular. And those are just the things that I mean, like in Georgia, we had, on Saturdays, we had a 10-hour block of wrestling. Joe Pedicino would turn an entire Saturday just into a wrestling day. And you had like all the major companies, you had Continental, you had everything just, right there at your disposal. So being in the Southeast, I mean, I was exposed more to the NWA and the Charlotte area and places like that.
Yeah, what a solid foundation. Many refer to that period of time as the golden era of pro wrestling in that geographic proximity. I noticed that you have this moniker of the Messiah of the Spine Buster, and a fan who sent a question in wanted to know if you were one of the individuals that you were inspired by was the great Double A Arn Anderson.
Arn Anderson was my hero. I was always a big fan of the Andersons. Like, Arn Anderson, by far, was the one person that I wanted to be like in the business. I don't know. I just studied him and Tully. Tully Blanchard and him were probably the greatest tag team in history, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the Rock and Roll Express is right up there with them, but I don't think you could have had a Rock and Roll Express without a Four Horsemen. I really don't, or a Midnight Express. And so, I mean, yeah, I emulated a lot of things that Arn did. Like, I really tried to do his facial expressions. Because, I mean, I don't know about most people in the business. Like, me and Elix Skipper used to fight all the time. He would be like, I'm stealing that move. And I'd be like, oh, shit, I'm stealing that facial expression. I'm going to start selling that exactly that way. So, I mean, Arn Anderson, like, just the way he would come up in the corner surprised after he was just outdone and stuff. I mean, it was just little things like that stuck out to me about him.
Yeah, you could definitely in your matches see some homage, if you will, to Double A. Can you talk about what the factor or factors were that resulted in you deciding to pursue wrestling as a career, and your training process? I've got it down that you're trained under Larry Santo.
Yes, yeah, Larry, and he just passed away recently, within the last month, maybe 2 months. And uh, I started with a couple of people, actually. The first time I ever saw wrestling live, I started training like a week later. I went to the live show and I saw it and I was mesmerized. But I used to tell my mom when I was 5 years old I was going to be a wrestler when I grew up. I mean, that's just all I've ever wanted to be. Everything I've ever done in my life. Me and Bull Buchanan used to talk about it all the time. He said that he went to college, and he said the only reason he went to college is so he could train longer to be a wrestler. I mean, he just wanted to work out more in the gym. He got a psychology degree just because it was the easiest degree he could get and still train to be a wrestler. So, I mean, for me, it's all I've ever wanted to be. Like, I had a dream when I was a kid, and the first time I ever went and saw it live, I got a chance to go do security the next week, and then the week after that, I was training. So I mean, I started with a guy named Lynn Fields, and Lynn showed me how to do bumps. Basically, I learned how to do bumps and things like that. And then I would go to other classes just to be their bump dummy. Like I would just go in there and take the moves from their students just so I could learn how to take the things the right way. I mean, that's I was determined. I had no desire to be anything else in life. I wanted to be a wrestler.
That's excellent. I noticed in '94 you did a number of shots for WCW on their syndicated television against Stars and Stripes, the Nasty Boys, Alex Wright, Johnny B. Bad, a couple others. Wanted to know about your experience during that period of time in WCW, how you got that booking, and a lot of fans. We've heard a lot about the atmosphere at Center Stage in Atlanta was kind of an interesting venue, so to speak, in terms of the fans that they had in there, non-traditional fans, so to speak. What was your experience like in that respect?
Well, Larry Santos, the one who got me the bookings, like he was already doing jobs on WCW at the time. So he would get me the bookings, and then he would charge me a booking fee just for getting me the bookings. So I mean, it was profitable for him, and it was the first time I was ever making money in the business. It was just me actually making real money in the wrestling business. But I was also getting to go into the dressing room and hang out with people that I idolized. Like I remember the first time I ever saw Ric Flair, it took my breath away. I couldn't even. There was no way I could have ever walked up and just talked to him. Because I saw him, I was just so mesmerized and starstruck. And then seeing Arn Anderson and Bobby Eaton and the Rock and Roll Express. I mean, just hanging out with any of those guys and being in there with Johnny B. Bad was awesome. Like he always took care of me in the ring. Like every time I got in there with Mark Marrow, he always took very good care of me. And some guys like Jim Duggan would take very good care of me when I would work with him. Like I'd get in the ring with Jim Duggan, and literally I wouldn't even see Jim Duggan all day long. Like he wouldn't come up say a word to me until about 5 minutes before the match, and he would walk up to me and he goes, "Yeah, I'm just gonna job you, kid." I was like, you know what, man, that's what I'm getting paid to do. Let's just go out there and have fun, and we did, and it always worked out very well. But WCW, like I remember Center Stage too. Like I remember a couple of times I went to Center Stage, and Center Stage was free. Like the fans didn't have to pay to get into Center Stage. They literally let them in free. And there were times where we couldn't pack out the building with free fans, and they would
Mm.
make us put on Sting shirts and give us foam fingers and sit in the crowd and jump up and down and scream just to pretend like we were fans and pay us to do that. So I mean, yeah, wrestling was at a really low point at that time when I was in WCW. Like WCW was paying us well, but at the same right, their business wasn't doing great at the time.
Mm-hmm. Was there ever any talk of staying on longer with WCW, or at a later point again when their fortunes changed, towards the mid to later point of that decade?
Well, I remember Jody Hamilton. We did a long week, like we did like a solid week of just wrestling for WCW. And at the end of the week, Jody Hamilton would pull a lot of us into his office, and he pulled me in as well. But most of the guys he pulled in, he would literally tell them, he's like, listen, you're not going anywhere in this business. You really need to find something else. You really, really, really are not going to make it at this. And then when he brought me in, the only thing he told me, and the only reason I know that is because other guys told me what he said to them when they came out of the office. And when he took me in, he said, listen, I think you have a bright future in this business. He said, you're young. He said, you need to get in the gym. You need to work harder. He said, but if you stay on the track you're on, you're actually going to do something in this business. So, with that kind of information from him, especially because Jody Hamilton was amazing, like he always treated me so well. Like, I remember one time I had to wrestle Vader, and it was my first time ever, being at the shows. And Leon had just broke Joe Thurman's back, like
Mm.
maybe a month before. And he comes in and they take me into a broom closet, him and Harley Race in the center stage. And he's like, okay, he hooks me for like a choke slam. He says, jump. And I jumped as high as I could. He goes, oh, you're going to take that really good. I'm doing that 3 times. And I'm like, fuck. Come on. So, I mean, so we start to walk out, and as we're walking out, Leon goes out the door. Harley grabs him by the arm and pulls me back into the little broom closet. He says, "Okay, this is what you're really going to do." He said, when he starts throwing the punches in the corner, he said, "I need you to start going this way as he's coming at you this way, and then start coming this way when he's coming that way, so he can never get a solid punch." He said, "Don't put your hands up because he's going to come underneath and try to break your ribs." He said, "That's just how he is." He said, "Watch the monkey splash because he's going to really try to hurt you with that." And I was like, at this point, I'm like, oh, this is going to suck. This is just going to be a nightmare. So I walk out there, and then me and Nick Patrick are standing there at the door, getting ready to go out the door to the ring. And Flair comes up and stops us. And him and Leon go into the closet again, and I can see them through a little glass door, and they're arguing back and forth. And I was like, damn it, Flair, he's already going to kill me. Please don't piss him off even more. He's just going to go in there and just destroy me tonight. So they walked out, and Leon took off his headgear, and he goes, "Good match, kid." And I said, "Oh, wow. I was really, really looking forward to this." And he just started laughing and slapped me in the head and walked off. And Jody apparently thought that he was going to hurt me. And apparently he had told somebody he had a migraine or some bullshit that day. And Jody was like, "Just cancel this match. I don't want this kid to get hurt." And he never let me work as a heel again or as a babyface. He made me work as a heel from that day forward. So, I mean, I have a ton of respect for Jody Hamilton. Jody Hamilton took such good care of me in WCW.
Yeah, it seems to be a very well regarded figure during that time. And it sounds like you may have dodged a bullet there. Did you get to? I know that's a difficult situation for a young guy in a locker room with all those legends. But did you get to get any advice or critiques from any of those individuals that were there, Double A or even Flair? Did any of them
I'll
look
be
at
honest with you, I
your
don't
match?
think I've ever held more than a high hello with a Double A. Like me and Arn Anderson have probably passed each other twice ever in the business. But
Mm,
like once again, he's one of those people I couldn't just walk up to and just introduce myself. I probably could now, but back then I would have been so shy and scared of him. I would have never done it. You know,
mm,
speaking of Vader, I did a show with Vader right after TNA, way after TNA, and it was like me, Vader, and Billy Gunn were sitting in the dressing room, and I was telling Vader that exact story. And as soon as I told him that he had just broken Joe Thurman's back, he kind of got defensive, and he goes, "So, what are you saying? I did it on purpose?" And I said, "No, I'm not saying you did it on purpose." He said, "Well, I went to the hospital right after that, and that kid wasn't paralyzed or anything. He was walking and everything." And I said, oh yeah, I agree. He wasn't paralyzed, but he wore a body cast from his dick all the way to his neck, and that was for a year. And you fucked him up enough to where I didn't want to work with you." And as soon as I said that, Billy Gunn hit the floor. He thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard somebody say to anybody. I was like, I said, "I would work you now, but back then I was just a young kid and terrified." I said, "You just broke somebody's back. I mean, I don't know what you expect."
mm, mm. Did you encounter that other than the almost match that you have with Vader of some of the veterans taking liberties with the young guys? Not necessarily yourself, but were you privy to any of that sort of stuff?
There were a lot of guys that guys were scared of there, like job guys. Uh, Scott Steiner was one of those guys. You know, he was one of those guys. You knew if you messed something up that you were going to get a receipt for it. Which, I mean, you know what? I'm still fine with that. I mean, it's just one of those things where you're there to make him look good. So if you're not doing your job, why should he be nice to you? Is the way
Mm,
I looked at it.
mm. Now you started making a name for yourself with NWA Wild Side, and you and correct me if I'm wrong. Sort of made a transition to becoming a tag team specialist. How did your tenure in Wild Side first come about?
Bill Barron's, me and Air Paris had just had a match at a place called White, Georgia, and it was an unbelievable match. Like, we took out all the stops. We did some unbelievable stuff, and somebody sent Bill Barons the tape of the match. And as soon as he saw it, he came in. He wanted Air Paris right off the bat, but he was willing to take me just because Air Paris didn't have a ride. So, you know, I would take Frank to the shows. That was my thing. Like I would always take Air Paris to the shows and make sure that he got there, and then they would always just work me into the show. That's how I wound up in Nashville. But then when I got to Wildside, me and Rick started talking because Rick pretty much owned the building. Like that Wildside was just his thing. He owned the building. Bill Behrens was the booker, and Bill Behrens did all the storylines. But at the same right, Rick was the man that was in charge. So I just automatically knew as soon as coming in the door, I said, if I'm tagging with him, I'm going to get pushed. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then for some reason, the NWA decided to put the World Tag Team titles on me and him. And how do I explain? All the great tag teams pretty much hated each other. I'm just going by me and Rick because we hated each other. We really did. Like we didn't ride together. We didn't share hotels. Like if we got booked, it was a totally separate thing. I wouldn't go to the show with him. I mean, we'd already had problems on the road as it was, and we'd wind up fighting or something. And I would just be like, you know what? It's not worth it. I'll just show up to the show. I'll do the match. But for some reason in the ring, he would know what I was going to do before I did it, and the same with him. I mean, we knew exactly what the other one was going to do, and once you got in there, I mean, it was just chemistry at that point, and you can't fake chemistry. Like, I mean, in this
Mm.
business, if you don't have chemistry, you're just never going to be a good tag team. I mean, you have to think like one person. You can't go out there and just and I see it a lot. I see it a lot now. A lot of tag teams go out there and it's two singles guys just doing two single guy matches,
Yeah.
and then one guy sells. And you're not seeing the quick in and out tags. You're not seeing the quick double team moves. You're not seeing them work as a team when they're in there. And I think it's a dying art, really. I mean, it's right up there with selling. People don't do it anymore.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more about tag team wrestling, which is a real head scratcher because look at all the money it drew over the years. You you first started working with AJ Styles in Wildside, and of course you had all those great encounters in TNA that those of us that were fans of the original TNA remember. Did you have that kind of you're talking about chemistry there? Did you have that kind of chemistry with AJ that carried over to TNA? Was that right off the bat, or was that just one of those things that developed the more you worked together?
Well, I've known AJ since he very first started training. Like literally, like Rick Michaels trained AJ Styles, and I've known him since he very first came in the door at Wildside. And the chemistry between me and him actually started just when me and him went on the road together one time. Like we went on the road together and we got along so well just on the road. I make people laugh, man. I don't know why. People, I do a lot of ignorant things. And sometimes just to have the story to tell, and people just laugh at me a lot. So I mean, I've wound up in so many jobs just because I make everybody laugh. I don't understand that. But, guys would be like, David's funny. Let's make sure he goes with us on this too. So, I mean, AJ, like, how do I explain me and AJ? AJ Styles is every bit as good a person outside the ring as he is a wrestler inside the ring. Like, I've never met anybody that cares more than he does. And for me, AJ would make me come to the show, come to the Wildside Arena, and me and him would work out in the ring every day. Like we would go out there and we would just run drills, and he would run me until I'd throw up, like literally. And I couldn't keep up with him at the time, and it took me a long time to get to where I could even remotely keep up with him. And like he just told me, he's like, "You're a star. You just don't see it yet." He said, do this, and do this," and then at the same right, we started inventing stuff too. Like I think I was the first person to ever take a Dragon Rana in the U.S., and it was from AJ. And um, we had a match that we had worked out, and we would go 25 minutes uh, wrestling. We would wrestle for 25 minutes straight. We'd go to a time limit draw, and then we would ask for 5 more minutes. And then when we got the 5 more minutes, we would take out all the stops. We would do every crazy spot we could come up with, every moonsault to the crowd. I mean, you name it, we would do it. And we did that at the Tojo Yamamoto Memorial Show. And the day we did it, Jerry Jarrett came to the show to see AJ because Bill Behrens had already told Jerry Jarrett about AJ and how amazing he was. So on the way there, we were coming back from Tampa. We just wrestled each other in Tampa. And he said, listen, there's this big show tonight. We have to have a good match because, Jerry Jarrett's there to look at me. So as soon as Jerry Jarrett comes in with Burt Prentice, they stepped in between us and they started talking to AJ. And Burt Prentice turned to me and he goes, "Hey, David." I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Could you go get Chris Harris for me?" I was like, "Yes, sir." And I just walked away. I never got to say, "Hey, how you doing?" I never got to shake Jerry Jarrett's hand. I never got to do any of that. So we went out. We had the match. We went the 25 minutes wrestling, and you can watch it on YouTube, I think.
Yeah.
And then we did the 5 minutes of high spots, and we went to another time limit draw. And I think the first time we ended it where he was just about to pin me, and I think the second time we ended it where I was just about to pin him. And we just walked out as a draw. And as soon as I stepped through the curtain, Jerry Jarrett grabbed me by the arm and pulled me outside and told me that was the best match he'd ever saw in his life, which is huge coming from Jerry Jarrett. He said,
Mm,
"I want to sign you right now." And me and AJ Styles were the first two contracts ever signed for TNA, like the first two. There were nobody else ever signed before us, and we
that's
signed
awesome.
that night. But yeah, my work, just working with Alan. If I hadn't been out there with him, I never would have gotten the opportunities that I got. I mean, I owe everything to AJ Styles.
Are you surprised that, my goodness, if fans, the non WWE fans that didn't see some of the matches that AJ had in TNA, I think back to some of the massively physical encounters he had with Abyss, cage match on that one, I guess it was Turning Point pay-per-view. The abuse on his body has been significant. Are you surprised at all that the man is still performing at such a high level?
No, not at all. Just because I know Alan, and I know Alan is one of those people that will never stop training. Like he trains constantly. Like I mean, he hurts. Don't get me wrong. He hurts just as bad as the rest of us do. I know. At one point, me and him had the same herniated disc. At one point, C5 and C6. So I mean, I know he's in pain while he's out there. Uh, Alan's very family motivated. Like, he wants to earn for his family, and the more he can make for his family, the better. Like, his wife is amazing. I love Wendy. Wendy is like the greatest saver in the world. Like, they're never going to be broke ever because Wendy saves every penny that they have, and she helps him with the finances and keeps him honest on the road. And I mean, he just has such a good family. Like, he's just such a good guy. Like, Allen is amazing as far as I'm shocked that he's still in there. Like I would have retired, you know. Well, hell, I'm still doing it too. Don't get me wrong, but it's
Hmm.
it's not on his level. Like it's nowhere near his level. I'm a song and dance man now compared to him. I go out there and I just work the crowd and play games now. And like he's still out there doing every major move you could possibly do and taking every major bump you could possibly take. So I don't know
Hmm.
what he makes, but he's worth every penny he gets. Like he really is.
Yeah, absolutely. A fan sent me a question wanting to know your experience working with the legendary and unfortunately gone too soon New Jack in 2001.
Oh, New Jack. Oh, he took years off my life. You know what? I love Jerome. Jerome was a good guy. I really, really did. I mean, I always told people, I said, Jerome Young is probably one of the best people I've ever met. He would give you the shirt off of his back. I said, New Jack hates you and he wants you to die. And unfortunately, when he got in front of a crowd of people, you always got New Jack. Like he had to have that persona and he had to build that character 24/7. Like he lived it. Like he Man, there was one night I wrestled New Jack, and we were at a bar downtown Atlanta, and it was an outside show, outside the bar. And the promoter said, "Listen, you guys can't bleed. I can't have blood here because we serve food." So during the match, me and New Jack are bleeding so bad that we can barely. I mean, it's just squirting out of my forehead. We're covered in blood, and the owner's so mad. He's outside the ring. He's just super upset. And New Jack asked for the microphone after the match, and he said no. And he said, "I'm not giving you my microphone." And New Jack literally pulled me up, and he leaned down and he goes, "I will not cut you." And he pulled a pocket knife out of his pocket and he stuck it to my forehead. And he told the promoter, he said, "You'll either give me that microphone or I'm going to cut him from one side of his head to the other." And I'm laying there thinking, so this is how it's going to end. This is the one day that this happens. This is somebody should have just warned me about this. So I'm laying there thinking that doom is about to set in for me. But the guy tossed him the microphone and he started talking. So I get the hell out of the ring. I get in the back as fast as I can. Well, they had us in the back and they had it tarped off. Well, Jack gets in a fight with a fan, and the guy, like, the security's holding them apart, and the guy reaches over and he rips Jack's shirt, and Jack goes crazy. He starts going after the guy. He's trying to get to him, and then he's like, "You know what? It's not worth it. It's not worth it. You know what? I'm done." And he starts to walk away. Well, the guy starts to turn around and walk away. Well, Jack runs and tackles the guy, and when he jumped on him, he cuts him from one side of his forehead to the other. And when he cut him, he slams his head into the concrete and there's blood going everywhere. And this guy's wife jumps on Jack's back and he flips her head first into the floor. They had to call an ambulance for her, by the way. And Jack comes in the dressing room with the knife and he cuts a hole in the wall and rips it open and throws my bag out in the street. And he throws his bag out in the street and he says, "Come on, David, we're going to the strip bar." And that's literally the way I left that show. I crawled through a hole into the street covered in blood, and we're going to a strip bar to like clean up and watch strippers. It was just Jack was one of a kind, man. Like he was just one of those guys that lived his gimmick.
Hopefully, you got paid in advance on that one.
Thank God. Thank God for that.
Jack was good about getting his money up front. So, so you signed with TNA. You were the very first. You and AJ, the very first signings. I'm curious when the model, the business model, which was, quite a departure from the traditional pro wrestling business model in terms of a major company, that it was a weekly pay per view. How was that laid out to you, and what were your thoughts?
Uh, I'll be honest with you. In the beginning, I thought it was just as doomed as everybody else did. But the more I worked there, the more I saw that every time somebody put a nail in the coffin of TNA, TNA made a huge comeback. Uh, I give Jeff Jarrett a lot of credit for that, man. Like, there's things now, like, I hated working for Jeff when I was there. I really, really, because Jerry Jarrett loved me. Jeff Jarrett did not. Jeff Jarrett was not a huge David Young fan by any means. So, I mean, and now when I see how Jeff, I watch a lot of Jeff's podcast, and I've learned things just from listening to him that I didn't know then. Like, things that he was dealing with and things that he was going through, and then all the guys that were coming to him. Like, I had no clue that guys were coming and complaining to him because I was getting too much TV time. Honestly, I had no clue about any of that. Nobody ever once came to me and said, "Why are you getting so much TV time?" And the only way I knew that was just listening to his show, and Conrad, said something to the point that a lot of the guys were complaining about it. And Jeff told Conrad that day that he thought I was a solid performer and I deserved everything I got when I was out there. But being there, it just felt different back then. Back then, every day I felt like I was going to the dentist. Like it was like going to any other job. Like, you hate going to your job and clocking in and just, spending your 10-hour day or 8-hour day or whatever you do, and you're just miserable at the end of the day. Well, that's exactly the way it was when wrestling started paying my bills. Like, it was always something. Like, we were going to show up, and like I would get heat and I didn't know I had heat. Like, it was just one of those things. Like, one day we showed up and we were supposed to wrestle Chris Daniels and AJ Styles, and I knew we were going to wrestle them. And we go there, and I look at the board, and we're wrestling Chase Stevens and Shark Boy, which wasn't even a tag team. and we're going under. And I was like, what happened now? So I go to Simon Diamond. He was the agent on the match. And I said, what's going on? He said, go get Elix. We need to talk. You know, me and Elix Skipper were the diamonds in the rough at the time. So I go get Elix. We come and he starts talking to us. He said, you're both going to get pinned same time Shark Boys finish. And I was like, why? I said, no, that's not going to happen. I said, go tell Jeff I'll take the finish by myself. You know, there's no way I'm going to let him pin us both. He said, no, I was told to tell you specifically that if you don't like your new finishes in this company, maybe Elix needs to stop asking for a raise. So, I mean, at that point, what do you say? I mean, that's when we asked for our release. And I've never, worked for the company except for the Slammiversary a couple of years ago since then.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sounds a lot like the pro wrestling business with the heat that you're not aware of, or the switched heat, etc. Wanted to ask you though about the old school fans of TNA look back fondly on those Asylum years in the fairgrounds and your experience working in that particular venue, because I think it was a really underrated period in pro wrestling in general, but definitely in the life of TNA.
No, I think the Asylum was the best parts of my life. Like my wrestling career, especially. Like I had more fun there than I've ever had anywhere else. Like, uh, I did the losing streak there, and Dutch came up with that for me. Like Dutch Mantel, him, and I think he stole it from Barry Horowitz. I know Barry Horowitz used to do that and did that in Memphis and got it over really huge too. But the losing streak, like I don't know, for me, wrestling, I don't feel like I don't have to go out there and win to get over. You know what I mean? Like I can go out there and get over losing
Yep.
and make losing the whole gimmick. You know, I could go out there and just be myself and have a good match and still lose and go crazy at the end of the night. And literally it transformed into the indies too. Like me and Elix would go on the indies during the week, when we weren't at TNA. And I would come out and just get a microphone and stand in the middle of the ring and go, do I look like a loser to you? Do I really look like a loser? Because I'm telling you right now, I'm a winner. And I would just do the whole spiel about being a winner and then slip on a banana peel right there at the end of the match. And I never won a match on the Indies. I swear to you, the whole time I was in TNA, I never won a match anywhere I went. Everywhere I went, I made sure I lost. Just for the fact that I was doing that losing streak. And then we did the Insane Clown Posse thing where I was afraid of clowns, which I don't like clowns. I'm not afraid of them, but I don't trust them. They're hiding something, or they wouldn't have to wear makeup.
Good
But
point.
I mean, uh, yeah, the being afraid of clowns thing, Dutch loved that. Like I knew those guys were going to be somebody that everybody was going to have their eyes on because the Juggalos were already out there barbecuing around the building, you know, 2 weeks before they ever got there. So I mean, I knew it was going to be huge. So I made sure that me and Disco got involved in the whole being afraid of clowns and me going out there and just botching everything just because I was a terrified of clowns.
Tremendous. Wanted to also ask about your experience or your tenure with. Did you have much interaction with Vince Russo during that period of time, or uh, his general? Did he have any involvement in your work as a whole?
Vince Russo hated me. He really did. He took me for a ride in his car one day, and he told me that every time I spoke, the only thing he heard was the TV show Hee Haw, and that he had no desire to push anybody with a Southern accent. Like he said that he just being from New York and being a New Yorker, which I don't know how that made him special in any way, shape, or form, but uh, he said that he just couldn't push somebody from the South. So I mean, that was pretty much my interaction with Vince Russo.
Yeah, strange given the fact that TNA was based where it was, and his he often criticized Vince McMahon for the same sort of thing. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
you teamed. This is another fan question. In 2003, you teamed with the legendary Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream. Wanted to know about that as well as your thoughts on Cody as the champion thus far in his run.
Oh man, I'm really impressed with Cody actually. Like Cody come out there and like changed his own career. Like going to AEW was probably the greatest thing he ever did because it raised his value so much in this business. And now he's actually killing it in WWE, which is awesome. I love Dusty. Dusty was a good guy. When Dusty came as a booker in TNA, he's another one of those guys. It was just really easy to get stupid heat with. Like I remember one day I got booked last minute for a show, and they called me like the night before, and Bob Ryder had to book the flights. And when he booked my flight, the only thing he could get was a first class ticket. So when I got on the plane, I sat down. He had Dusty in coach, and for the next 3 weeks after that, I had nothing but heat with Dusty because I was in first class and he was in coach. Like it had nothing to do with me whatsoever. But yeah, Dusty, yeah, he was one of those guys, man. It was just really easy to get insane little bitty heat things with.
Yeah, that first class thing seems to have seems to have impacted a lot of guys in a similar way. Did you think about moving or giving the seat
Oh,
up to
what?
try?
I literally got up and walked to the back of the plane and asked him to switch seats with me, and he refused. Like as soon as he walked by me, Samoa Joe screamed, "Oh, that's heat! That's heat!" He said, "You're dead, man." He said, "It's over for you." And I was like, "Ah, oh, damn it!" I got up and I went and asked Dusty if he'd please take my seat, and he's like, "No, no, 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 you take that seat. You're good. You go ahead." I wasn't good. Yeah, that was a lie. It was just
Yeah,
horrible from that day forward.
yeah, that's wild to me. Wanted to just throw a couple of names out of your colleagues that you work with in TNA at the time. Just a quick name association for that initial period where the company was taking off. Starting with you mentioned Chris Harris, but a man that we've had up in Great North Wrestling about a year and a half ago did a tremendous match against the Blood Hunter, America's Most Wanted as a team, but of course, Cowboy James Storm.
I love James Storm. I love James Storm. James Storm, the first time I ever worked in Nashville, Tennessee, I did a show at the fairgrounds, which is the Asylum. Burt Prentice was running the show, and it was the first time I had ever worked a show where it was so packed. Like you had to fight through the crowd. Like I remember watching old videos of Dusty where he was having to like just swim through the people to get to just to get to the ring. And it was exactly that way at the fairgrounds that night. It was, I think, the main event was the Fabulous Ones against the Tennessee Vols, Reno Riggins and Steve Dahl. And I was the opening match against James Storm. That's how first time we'd ever met. And it just felt so weird because I was having to fight through the crowd to just get to the ring. And then when we get in there, I had a 5-star match with James Storm. Like from that day forward, I mean, every time I've ever worked James Storm, like he will call a million spots just for the fact that he knows that I can do them with him. Like, and he knows I'll be right there for anything.
Mm-hmm. What a talent! A guy you mentioned, and of course have some significant history with, and a very controversial presence now, thanks to his podcast, Keeping It 100, and that would be Disco Inferno, Glenn.
Glenn was one of those guys where I look at Glenn the same way I look at Raven. I've either walked away so depressed I wanted to kill myself or so mad I wanted to kill him. There was never any middle ground there. Like I was just, it's just, I mean, I like Glenn, I really do, but I can only handle Glenn in small doses. Like Glenn, like goes a little crazy every now and then, and just keeps on and keeps on and keeps on, especially if he's got a rib. And but no, I had a lot of fun with Glenn. Like everything we did, I learned a lot from Glenn. To be honest with you, because Glenn like had been in the office, and Glenn knew things that I didn't know how to do. Like I didn't know the politics behind a lot of the things, and Glenn did. So I mean, I swerved a lot of obstacles and a lot of potholes just because I was with Glenn.
Mm-hmm. What about the man who was, again, one of those key figures in the early days of TNA? He seemed to have just an incredible career ahead of him. Very short, unfortunately, unremarkable tenure in WWE, but man, what a favorite for the fans in TNA. That would be the alpha male Monty Brown.
I really liked Monty Brown. Monty Brown was one of the nicest guys I ever met. And he had a Super Bowl ring. I mean, I worshiped him just for that. I mean, I was like, damn, he played in the Super Bowl. He was with Tom Brady. He was out there on the field. He actually did it. Monty was one of those guys, man. Like, when he first came into TNA, I remember everybody in the office, they were like, he does the greatest promos I've ever heard in my life. Oh my God, his promos are so good. And then when he wanted more money, all of a sudden, oh, his promos are so stupid. Like I can't stand to even hear him talk. And it literally happened like that. Like as soon as he asked for more money, that's when everything turned to crap for him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What about the Monster Abyss?
I love Abyss. I love him. I love him. I've known him. Gosh, we went through the Indies together, so I mean, we just have one of those bonds. Like he's that guy I could call right now, and we would pick up on the very last conversation we were having, and wouldn't miss a beat. Like Chris is one of my favorite people in the business. I always said he had what about Bob syndrome because every time I would first see Chris, I'd walk up and he'd be like, "Hey man, you mad at me? I haven't seen you in a month. Why would I be mad at you?" He's like, I don't know, man. You get heat in this business sometimes, and you sure you're not mad at me? And he would just ask me that like 100 times in one night. He'd be like, "You sure you're not mad?" I'm like, "No, I'm not mad. I have no reason to be mad at you. I love you. You're awesome." But he's also one of the funniest people I ever met in my life too. Like he stayed at my house one time, and it was like, gosh, he was at my house. Him, Chris Harris. Uh, there was a few people, man. There was like I used to have a house for wayward wrestlers. Like guys would just come in and stay at my house if they were on the road. That way they didn't have to pay for a hotel or anything. And Abyss was asleep, and my little boy, Chris Harris, put my little boy into going in there and hitting him in the face with a frying pan while he was asleep. And he hit him with the frying pan. He said he opened his eyes and all he saw was this little kid standing there laughing. And he said the pan was still dinging. He said, I thought I was in the middle of a Children of the Corn movie or something. They said it was the most horrible thing I've ever went through in my life.
That's fabulous. Did you? I know you mentioned earlier Shark Boy, but what were your thoughts on that presentation? It was unusual from the start, to say the least.
I love Dean. Dean is one of my favorite people. Me and Samoa Joe used to fight all the time on who was going to be his best friend after he sued Disney. Like I would come out to the pool and Joe would be out there and he'd go, "So Dean's in India this week. You think did you send him a care package or anything like that?" I said, "I didn't have a chance, Joe. I was taking care of his kids and washing his car. I couldn't have a chance to send anything today." But I mean, I love Dean. Dean is one of the funniest guys I've ever met in my life, and it shows that when he's out there, when he did the Stone Cold stuff and all that stuff. I mean, that was just hilarious, and that was just him. He would do that in the dressing room, and that's how all of that stuff started. Like Jay Lethal would just imitate Macho Man or imitate Flair or imitate somebody in the back, and we just see it, and the next thing you know, the office saw it, and it would wind up on TV.
Yeah, and very, very gracious to his to the fans at the events too. I noticed that, and last but not least, you mentioned him numerous times, but what a career, and man, he's still killing it. Could still be a world champion, carrying that title today. Had a great run in AEW, and that would be the man Samoa Joe.
Oh man, I have a great Samoa Joe story. like we had this game that came from England. Johnny Storm brought it from England, and you would just walk up to somebody and you would throw a punch, but you would just barely tap them, and you had to do it when they least expected it. And I don't know exactly how or why. I'm sure alcohol was involved, but me and Joe decided we were going to hit each other in the face as hard as we possibly could, and uh, you had to do it when he least expected it. You know, like I punched him while he was peeing one time because I knew he couldn't hit me back. And and I don't know if you've ever pissed off a Samoan before, but I don't recommend it as far as, especially as far as insurance rates go, because it's not a pleasant thing. Samoans are not the people you really want to piss off.
Mm.
But one day I decided I was going to, like, they had done this prank on me where I was coming back from the bar to the hotel, and I had like 5 or 6 people with me, and I get a text from Chris Daniels, and it said, "Joe is asleep." And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to punch that bastard while he's sleeping." So I was like, "Leave your door open." So I come up there and I bring all these people for witnesses, and I go tiptoeing into the room. And as soon as I get in front of the bed, Joe dives out of the bathroom and he just cold cocks me. And I bounce off the TV, I bounce off the bed, my face is in the floor, my ass is in the air. And like, everybody's laughing at me. Chris Daniels videotaped it with night vision on the other side of the room. It was just nothing pleasant came out of this for me. So I went to Scott Demore and I said, "Listen, nobody watches the local show that we do here in Orlando." He said, "Let me wrestle Joe in a singles match on that, and I'm going to hide beside the ramp, and I'm going to punch him as he's coming down the ramp." And Demore agreed to it. I don't even know exactly what would make him agree to it, but it was intriguing enough to where he said, "Okay, let's do it." So Joe had no clue this was going to happen. So me, Elix, and Simon Diamond go to the ring, and Joe's music hits, and I run and hide beside the ramp. And when I jumped and I punched him, I had missed his jaw and I hit him right here in the side of the eye. And when I did, his eye instantly started to swell. And he's mad. I mean, he's so mad. He's like a damn raging bull trying to get to me. But Elix and Simon had done jumped on him and started hitting him. And he's trying to fight through them to get to me. And he come up and he forearmed me on the floor and I flipped into the ring. And when I come up on my knees, he hit the ropes and he kicked me in the chest as hard as he could. And then he hits the ropes again and he kicks me in the chest as hard as he can again. And I did a backflip and came up in the corner. And he ran and he dove in and he forearmed me in the jaw as hard as he could. And as soon as he hit me, I was laying there for a second. I looked at him. I said, "Are you done, Joe?" I said, "Are you done?" I said, "I punched you on national television. I don't give a shit what you do at this point to me. I win." And he stops for just a second and he goes, "Okay, I'm playing now." But he was light as a feather after that. Like, he never hurt me again. But as soon as we got to the dressing room, he collapses into the floor because when I punched him, he hyperextended his knee and it tore his PCL. And Jeff
Mm.
Jarrett lost his mind. Jeff was in my face. His finger was in my chest. He was like pointing in my face. He was just like telling me, "I'm done. I'm fired," and all this and that. In front of everybody too. And then Scott Demore just, thank goodness for Scott Demore. Scott Demore goes, "Actually, Jeff, I gave him permission to do the whole thing." Just like, that's the only thing that saved my job was the fact that Scott Demore stepped in, and then Joe stepped in and was like, "You know what, man? I've punched him in so many different times, and it's been hilarious." He said, "Just because he got me on TV doesn't mean that he should be fired for this." So I mean, they went to bat for me, but yeah, Jeff was ready to just get rid of me right then and there. Which I've been fired from TNA so many times. Hell, one time I was at TNA and I read it on the kayfabe sheet while I was there that I'd been released. I took it to Jeff and showed it to him, and then he was like, "Yeah, you can't believe everything you read." And then I was off TV for 6 weeks. So I mean, it's
Why do you
weird how
think?
you find out.
Why do you think Jeff wasn't in your corner, so to speak?
Him and his dad didn't get along. They really didn't. Like, they argued constantly. There was one time Jerry Jarrett took me out into the stands, and I don't even know if I've even told anybody this story ever. But he told me he was going to start a rival company against TNA, and he wanted me to be a part of his company. He said, and this is exact words. He said, "For everything that Jeff Jarrett knows in this business, at the same time, he doesn't know his ass from a hole in the ground." He said, "He didn't see a star in you from day one, and I think he's wrong." He said, "Come to me, and I will make you the star that you should have been." And at that point, as soon as Jerry told me that Hacksaw Jim Duggan was going to be his booker and all this and that, I was like, "Jerry, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm getting a paycheck here, and it's feeding my family, and I just can't do it. I'm going to stick this out and see where it goes." and
Hmm.
the company never came across. So I mean, it was probably the best thing I ever did.
Hmm. Hmm. A fan on you mentioned the diamonds in the rough, which
Mhm.
we're a quite a ubiquitous presence on TV with Diamond and Elix and all those great matches that you had. A fan wanted to ask in particular about you worked a number of bouts against Team 3D, the Dudley Boys, and
Mhm.
any memories of working with Devon and Bella.
Tons. Yeah, actually, we were the first team to actually work them coming in the door. Like they put them in there with us coming out right off the bat, and all day long, Simon Diamond would come to us and goes, "Bubba's gonna kill you." Really, Bubba's gonna kill you. He goes, ask me what I think about Devon. I said, ask me what I think about Devon. Devon's a great guy. You're gonna love working Devon.
Oh, we seem to have unfortunately had David Freeze. Let's hope that we get him back. Hopefully, quickly. This tends to happen. Fans apologize for any inconvenience there. We'll hope that David comes back. What a storyteller certainly does not disappoint for those of us that are fans of the original Total Nonstop Action. Have a quite a bunch of questions more. So hopefully we'll get him back. If not, we'll have to reschedule the second half of the interview, but let's hope that the technical issues resolve themselves. We'll give it a couple of seconds here. Any fan questions for David that you want to get in? Because I imagine we're going to be doing a part two. Please send them to myself on Facebook or X under No Gimmicks Guy on X or Jack Kilby on Facebook, and we'll get that into the second interview that we're likely going to be doing. Unfortunately, I'm assuming that his phone died or we lost the signal, so we will reschedule a second part of this interview. Man, what an entertaining guy! Absolutely did not disappoint, and you can see why he is quite beloved in the business. Stay tuned to thehannibaltv.com for updates as to future interviews that we have scheduled, including, oh, here he is back.
I am so sorry, man. It said the phone overheated.
No worries, man. I'm just glad
Where
you
was I in the story?
you were talking about how Diamonds in the Rough were the first to work the Dudley Boys or Team 3D on the way in, and Mr. Kenny was ribbing you that, or maybe not ribbing you,
Yeah, he was
that
ribbing. He
Bubba was
really
going to
was
kill you.
because he loves both of those guys. Like he really does. He likes both of them. But he would go, ask me what I think about Devon. I was like, what do you think about Devon? He goes, God, that Devon's a great guy. You're gonna love working Devon. It's gonna be so easy for you. He goes, ask me how it's gonna go with Bubba. I said, how's it gonna go with Bubba? He goes, man, Devon's great. That Devon's gonna be awesome. He's gonna make you look great. So I mean, but you know what? Like as much as he built it up for us, and me and Elix were ready to go out there and just like get the crap beat out of us. We really were, but they were awesome. Like they were amazing every time we worked with them. Like, and they're funny. Oh, they're so funny, man. Like we got on a plane one day, and literally like Devon was sitting back there in the back with me, and Bubba gets on the plane, and the stewardess goes over the PA system and goes, "Mr. Dudley, Mr. Devon Dudley, we have your seatbelt extension." And from the back of the plane, you hear, "Fuck you, Bubba!" Like it was just like hilarious. Like it's just constantly those two were ribbing each other. But no, I mean I had great matches with both of those guys. Every time we worked with them, they were awesome.
Mm-hmm,
There
mm-hmm.
was this one time, and it's not even this one time. Elix went through this phase where if Elix had to take something horrible, like Elix would always get a concussion and not know what the hell was going on, and then Dave would have to go in there and take it for him. Like I went through the table like 5 nights straight one night, like literally every night. I had cuts and scratches all over me, and even Bubba was like, and they were power bombing me off the top rope through the table. And he was like, Dave, he said, I'm not doing that shit again tonight. He said, Elix needs to take it. So we get
Mhm.
out there. Elix gets a concussion and can't keep going. Like Elix is just staggering around on the floor. And I said, I'll take the power bomb through the table. And he goes, no, we're just going to give you 3D and then we're going to the back. He just gave me 3D in the middle of the ring and they just left me in there. But I mean, they were always super good to us. Like, I mean, I have nothing bad to say about anybody, man. I can never tell you anybody that ever tried to take liberties with me in that ring. Like all of the guys I worked with at TNA were amazing. Like, I mean, I've had bad matches. Don't get me wrong, but most of those were my fault. Usually, I would screw something up, or just something like that. But I mean, I don't know. Just all of those guys were just always so amazing to work with.
Absolutely. What a roster. We have a live fan question. Wanted to know who the best ribbers in TNA were from your perspective.
Ribbers. Uh,
Mhm.
Let me think. Uh, Samoa Joe was probably right up there at the top. Like he would do stuff. Like he's that guy that would like hide your bag and like you would like leave your room and you'd have a sticky note and then you'd go all over the hotel, all 12 floors, and there'd just be one sticky note would just lead you to another sticky note. And you would just go like all 12 floors and then your bag would be hanging outside your window on a rope or some shit like that. Like that was just his thing. I remember one time he put my damn gel pads in the freezer and froze them, so I had to wrestle with frozen gel pads that night.
Oh my, that must have been uncomfortable. I guess
I don't
you
even
got
know
to
how
do
he
what
got in
you
my
got to
room.
do.
I had no clue how he even got in my room.
That's awesome. I guess it passes the time on the road. Did you ever consider when TNA you're back and forth there as well? But did you ever consider approaching WWE to obtain a contract with them after you had
I've
all
done
that
things as
TV
an
time?
extra. I've done a lot of things with as an extra with WWE, and I've actually had several matches with WWE. I've had I wrestled Funaki, I wrestled Billy Gunn. Uh, Gosh, who else? Me and Funaki had a really good match, and then me and a guy from Wildside, Onyx, we actually wrestled a dark match for WWE, and we did like 20 minutes, I guess, out there, and I don't know. I just never felt like I fit in there though. Like it just didn't feel like a right fit for me. Like every time I went, and especially like the last few times I went, they got to where you weren't even allowed to get dressed in the same dressing room with the guys. They would put you in a tarp in the middle of the building or something like that. So after that, I was there with Dave Taylor one night, and they kicked Dave Taylor out of the dressing room. So I mean, all of us, they kicked us all out. They were like, we don't really need you guys tonight. We're just gonna give you some tickets and let you go sit in the crowd, and that was it. So I was just like, you know what, screw this place. I have no desire to ever come back again.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't blame you. What are your thoughts on and you touched on it briefly before about TNA that was a you know they've called it intermittently a zombie promotion because it won't die, and now it seems to have after Scott D'Amore's departure or whatnot, they seem to have a relationship with WWE. What are your thoughts on the company and all the various, well, it's a company, but it seems to be separate and distinct periods, and the fact that TNA is still around today, maybe not doing huge business, or maybe they're having a resurgence right now, but they're still around after all these years, 22 years ish.
I think TNA is one of the best learning grounds you're ever going to find out there in the Indies right now. I mean, there's other places. Ohio Valley's really good. I mean, you have to learn how to be on TV to be on TV. And when I very first went to TNA, I didn't know how to be on TV. Like Wildside TV was totally different than being on a major network TV. Like I didn't know times. I didn't know how to hit my mark. I didn't know how to. I mean, there was just things I didn't know about acting and about just being out there. And when you go to these companies, they expect you to already know that. That's why nobody's going to tell you how to do it. Like, nobody's there to help you through this. TNA was the same way. TNA, we had nobody to say, hey, do this, this, and this that way. The closest I had to that was Dutch, and Dutch would come up to me and be like, "David, you're overacting. Don't do that." He said, "Slow down, talk lighter." And Dutch was a huge help to me. Like I love Dutch Mantel. Dutch Mantel is one of my favorite people in the business. Like he would literally like kind of take me under his wing, and he would literally be like, and sometimes he would come up to me and go, "You're the only one in this company that gets it." He said, "I could do anything with you. Hell, I could throw you out there and you could wrestle a damn chicken and you'd be fine with it." He said, "Rest of these guys complain about everything." He's like,
Hmm.
that's, and I think it's more ego driven now that guys get out there and they think that they have to look cool or they have to look like. I kind of like looking like the idiot. I don't mind going out there and looking stupid in front of the crowd. I mean, at the end of the day, my paycheck's still paying my bills. I don't really give a shit what somebody thinks about it.
Hmm. And it's entertaining. Here's a kind of a left field fan question asking, what is your view on the late Chris Benoit's son David wanting to join pro wrestling? And I mean, this is a rumor that's been around for a while. I know he did some training with Harry Smith, but I don't think he's actually stepped into a ring as of yet. But what are your thoughts on that?
I'm not going to make any new fans saying this, but Chris Benoit was one of my heroes. He really was. Like, I really loved his work. Like, I cried the night that I heard that he died. Like, him and his family had passed away. And then I was crushed the next day when I heard that it was a murder suicide. Like, I was crushed. And, like, and I can't deny his body of work. Like I can't. Like I can't look at his body of work. I still think WrestleMania 30 is one of the greatest matches I've ever watched in my life. The three-way between him, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels. Like I've never saw that much psychology in one match, to where it just told a story without them saying a word. I could just see that in that match. And if he could be anywhere near as good as his dad is, I think he deserves a shot. I mean, you can't hold him accountable for something his father did. And there's no reason that kid shouldn't be able to make it in this business. There's no reason at all. I mean, what his dad did was horrible, and it really hurt the business more. And that's the crazy part. Like he loved the business so much, and yet he probably hurt it more than anybody's ever hurt it ever. Like he
Hmm.
literally almost destroyed the wrestling business
Hmm.
just by what he did. And
Yeah.
I don't blame WWE for what they did and cutting him completely out of everything. But at the same right, you still can't deny his body of work. Like, I mean, as far as a worker goes, he was amazing. Like, he was just incredible. And I'd heard so many stories about him where they talk about he would discipline himself. Like, he would literally go in and do like 500 squats just because he missed one spot and stuff like that. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, I don't think you're ever going to find that kind of discipline in this business again. And his work rate was amazing, but I just feel horrible having to say that out loud because of what he did. So I
Mm.
mean,
Yeah, I get it. It's a real dichotomy between what he accomplished in the business and
yeah,
what he did. But I would agree. I don't think you could hold David accountable for that. That's kind of
not by any
ridiculous.
means, not by any means.
Yeah. We've got time for one last fan question asking which town had the best nightlife and which had the best crowd. Would that be Nashville?
Nashville was my favorite by far. Nashville, we were kind of like rock stars in Nashville. Like we didn't pay bar tabs. We didn't. I mean, everything was free when we would go out in Nashville. So I mean, there was a lot of really crazy nights in Nashville. Uh, a lot of good people too. Like we just had people that literally, as soon as we go out, they would be like, "Hey, come to our club. We want you in here." And then uh, there's other places I've loved too, though. I loved Salt Lake City. Like it's one of my favorite places to just go wrestle. Like I just love being around the Rocky Mountains, and the people are so nice there, and it's just uh, me and Chase Stevens had a few crazy nights in L.A. To be honest with you, I mean, every time I say the name Chase Stevens, like everybody's like, "Oh, I'm sure you got a crazy story." I mean, but yeah, we have a ton of crazy stories with Chase Stevens.
Yeah, great guy. I also had the pleasure of interviewing him as well. You've had a lengthy career. You've been on national television. You've got a lot of accomplishments. You're continuing to work to this day. Got a pretty hot tag team down in that territorial area. What would you, if you had to boil it down, what would you consider your proudest accomplishment, if you will?
To be honest with you, the only reason I'm in the business now is to try to help young people. Like I really like going out there and finding guys that are good, that can open doors for themselves. And if my name can open their doors for them in any way, shape, or form, I mean that's something that I'm still hanging out for. Like I don't like bumping. I hate it. You know, man. There's nothing about landing on my head that appeals to me at this age.
Mm.
But I do like going out there and dealing with the fans. Like I love entertaining the fans. I love being in front of the crowd. I love just you know finding ways to entertain them without me landing on my head. Like the more entertaining I can be, and the better for me. And for some reason, I have this God-given ability to piss people off. So I mean, it's not that hard for me to go out there and make people mad just by saying a few things.
And that's work. What do they say? Work smarter, not harder. If you've got that
Yes,
ability, run with it, right?
I wish I'd have known how to work like this back when I was in my prime. I really do. Like the things I do out there now are night and day compared to like it's literally like a Broadway show when I go out there now. Like it's literally like, and my tag team partner Adam Jacobs, I love that kid. Like he's like my little brother. Like he has been for years. We were in Wildside together. My favorite story about Adam is we were at TNA and they gave him a tryout match and he was in a dark match against AJ Styles. And everybody all day long, they were like, Adam Jacobs is going to be the next big star. Adam Jacobs is coming out here. He's going to make a name for himself. He's going to be great. And as he come running down to the ring, down the ramp, he went to dive in the ring and he dove head first inside the ring and just fell on the floor. And
Oh
Jeremy
wow!
Borash was in the ring and just threw the microphone in the air and walked away. And Adam was so mad. The match was great, by the way, but nobody remembered the match. All they remembered was Adam just diving head first into the side of the ring. He looked like a lawn dart, just diving into the side of the ring.
Nerves, I
Uh,
guess, right?
he was. I think it was nerves, and he was just angry after that. Like he was just, and I think he's been an angry, bitter little man ever since. To be honest with you, because he's gonna be so mad that I just told that story.
That's tremendous. We've really burned through our time, David. It's been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you coming on and telling some of your great stories. Where can the fans keep up with you on social media or all your upcoming events? Anything that you want the fans to know about, please do right now.
I mainly work for Bullpen Wrestling right now. Bull Buchanan has his own company in Monroe, Georgia. Is it Monroe? Monroe, Georgia, and like it's amazing. Like every time I've worked for him so far, it's been incredible. I just did Dragon Con Thursday, and we probably had like 1,500 people there, 2,000 somewhere in that range. Uh, my Facebook is I couldn't imagine anybody else wanting to be me. To be honest with you, so I mean, there's bound to be only one David Young. If you see my picture on there, it's definitely me because nobody wants to imitate me. And the same with my Instagram. It's usually at David Spinebuster is what you would find me at on those things. So
Well, want to encourage the fans to check you out. Keep on top of all the good stuff that you have going on. Really enjoyed this interview, and thank you for your time once again, sir.
no, thank you so much for having me.
Well, fans, that's it for another edition of the Great North Wrestling Podcast. If you haven't by now, hit that subscribe button to the HannibalTV.com. We're closing in on another milestone, 400,000 plus subscribers, and you will keep up to date as to all the great content that we have coming, including this interview. So, fans, thanks once again for watching, and we will see you next time.